Hello friends, welcome to SR Academy.
Welcome to SR Academy. Empowering minds, igniting curiosity. Your gateway to knowledge unleashed. Let's get started.
Today's topic we are discussing is sequence of events that underlie wound healing. That means, so whatever there are some of the steps. Once imagine the person falls or somewhere or he gets wound. Okay, suddenly there are a lot of steps which naturally occurs inside our body. So those things we are discussing here in today's video. It's very simple to note that our body has got a very what do you say the super mechanisms where all the mechanisms they tend to do very rapidly. For example, the moment you get what happens the moment you get a wound, imagine you felt something and you got scratched on your hand or something like that, and suddenly you start bleeding, right? So after few minutes, okay, suddenly that bleeding will stop automatically. Nowadays, most of the time we will be using some turmeric, that, this and all, or sometimes we use even mud also. Okay, those are very old and rough methods, right? So what happens? But whatever it is, even though if you don't apply anything within a few within a few minutes, if the wound is not so serious or something like that, then what happens within few minutes or within an hour, so this particular a kind of thrombus kind of structure will be formed. Thrombus in the sense you will get that wound will the bleeding will be stopped, so that there will be some kind of brown kind of structure will be formed on your wound. So the bleeding will be stopped. That is the first thing which will happen. So in order to happen, in order to get that one, it's very important that in our body, okay, a lot of things, lot of cells should move to that particular part. Okay, a lot of mechanisms should happen. All those things will be happening. That is the first step, and then later it will start. The proper mechanism of clotting, then where the platelets will be involved. They will hire a few cells, and then those inflammatory cells will come, and then they will start binding, or then finally they will have a proper cascades. Will be there. Those cascades will come and sit in that particular wound site, and they will make sure that there is no more blood leakage, or you can say the blood loss, and then it will slowly it will start recovering your epidermis level, then the endodermis level and all, right? And finally you will get that particular wound is going to be healed within a week or 15 days or 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the intensity of the wound. So once this particular wound is healed, what happens later just about the after healing, what happens? So there might be a scar formation. This scar formation is obviously the main reason is main reason for this scar formation is basically when the wound is healed, there are a lot of chemicals from inside our body, a lot of proteins, a lot of things which will come and sit on that particular site, because they will be used for for example, if you are having the extracellular components like fibronectin, and you are having collagen 1, collagen type 3, and as we discussed in the previous module, whatever the cell components are there, even they might be there, or because of these things which are available at that particular site for which are assisting the wound healing, they have to they will be there. More of the chemicals will be there. Because of that only the scar formation will be there. And once so it takes months or several days for this particular scar to disappear, understanding. So usually in every wound there will be a little bit scar, and if the intensity is too much, then the scar will stay for a longer period of time, or even sometimes lifetime also. Some scars will be there, understanding. So that was the introduction about the sequence of events that underlie the wound healing. This the whole concept I just summarized into a few points. So let's start with the slide wise. So The first point, immediately after the injury, I have categorized this particular sequence of events into 4 categories or 4 different steps, where a lot of events are there. If you can name, it will be 1 2 3 4 5 and with a huge number of the steps. But as based on the major achievements in wound healing, I have made it as 4 different steps. The first step is which explains how the epidermal cells proliferation begins and migration starts. Okay, how exactly this epidermal cell they will start proliferating and migration. So that will be the end stage of the first step, understanding. So that means, so that's how the second step will be. You are having the basal layer will be formed, and how it will be formed, that we will be seeing that under that particular step. And then the third step, epidermal layer gets organized, how exactly this organization happens, and finally remodeling and scar formation. Okay, so let's begin with the first step. So immediately after the injury, to control the bleeding, the platelets are activated. So the first thing is to stop bleeding, right? So our body already knows it, so it will employ platelets. Now the platelets are activated. We know that the major function of the platelet is to stop the blood loss, or you can say the blood clotting, it will be, right? So because when the platelets are activated, they adhere to the injured site. That means they will move to the injured site. Now they secrete a storage granules. So these storage granules will help recruiting more platelets. For example, imagine you got a wound here. Okay, so there are few platelets around here, so they will move to that particular injured site. Now these platelets will also has got there is some they will secrete they will secrete this particular storage granules. Why they secrete? Because they know that so much number of the platelets are not enough to stop the clotting of blood. So what they do in most of the cases, they secrete the storage granules. What are these granules? They will help recruiting more platelets to the site, to the injured site from the thrombus. From the site of the injury to form thrombus. So from there, where they will employ, they means they will get it from the different parts of the body. So where in the blood, where like we are having platelets, RBC and WBC, right? So these platelets will be employed by the storage granules. Okay, and they will move and they will make sure that all the platelets are coming towards the wound. Okay, so why they need more platelets? Because we need to stop blood loss as soon as possible. So how we can stop? By forming thrombus. So who is stopping? Platelets, right? So a release of agents from the platelets causes increased permeability of blood vessels. So some of the agents will be released from the platelets, which causes increased permeability of blood cells. Now the clotting cascades will be there, that is produced by the the platelets. So these clotting cascades will then be initiated, resulting in the cleavage of fibrinogen to fibrin plug. So this particular fibrinogen, where it will be there, obviously it will be there in our every tissues. We have studied in tissue components and cell components, right? So in extracellular matrix is also one of the tissue component. Under extracellular matrix only we are having the fibrogen, collagen, type 1, type 3, all those things that we discussed in the previous module. If you want, you can just go back and just have a glance. So the clotting cascades will then be initiated, resulting in the cleavage of the fibrinogen to form fibrin plug. Now the fibrin plug along with the fibronectin forms a provisional matrix. This particular fibrin plug will be there, no? So whatever the plug is called, so that will along with the fibronectin, they will form the provisional matrix. So what is this provisional matrix? This provisional matrix will help for the recruitment of the inflammatory cells. So why we need inflammatory cells? Obviously, so there, wherever the wounded part is there, it has lost cells, so it needs cells, so that there has to be cells should be cloned, right? Now the recruitment of inflammatory cells will be done by this provisional matrix, and then the fibroblasts and as well as other accessory cells. That means whatever the cells are required. Okay, fibroblasts obviously for structural and mechanical support, that will be required, and cells should be there so that there can be, the wound can be healed. So during this time, what happens? Epidermis cells begins to proliferate. All these things, because of these all events, what happens? Now the epidermis, that is outer layer, cell begin to proliferate and migrate across the wound. They will start migrating. If it is a round and a wound is round, then they will start migrating across the wound. Okay. So that was about here proliferation. What happens? The epidermal cell proliferation and migration happened in the first step. Now what is next step? Now the basal layer has to be formed or reformed. Why it is reformed? Because it is already ruptured. Now we have to reform it, right? So that's why it is not called as formed, it is called as reformed. Now the next step in the wound healing process is to recruitment of inflammatory cells to the injured site, that we discussed in the previous slide. How where and all it will be helpful. Those the matrix, the provisional matrix will be helpful for recruitmenting the inflammatory cells. So now these cells, where it has to be recruited into the or on the site of the injury. Now effective wound healing process requires invasion of macrophages. Now macrophages is also very important. Why? Because the wound means what? There is a significant of cell damage, right? That means a lot of cells have been died. Now what does macrophages do? They will clear the cellular debris, right? So whatever the waste cells are there, that macrophages will engulf or remove, right? Next, and also macrophages, they will also clear the pathogen microorganisms in the injured site. Understanding? So along with these particular inflammatory cells, the effective wound healing requires macrophages, right, to the wounded site, since it clears cellular debris and as well as pathogenic microorganisms. Why microorganisms? Because when there is a wound, that means it is more probably that you went and fell on the ground. There are a lot of microorganisms in the ground, and maybe it is just a wall or anything. Okay, it might be iron or it may be anything. So there are a lot of microorganisms in every part, everywhere in this world, right? So that's why even inside our mouth also there are a lot of microorganisms, right? So in order to stop the infection or or any microbial or any pathogenicity to our cells which has been around the wound which can come, so that can be stopped by the macrophages. So in the epidermal layer, now the basal layer is formed. So inside the epidermal layer, the basal layer will be formed when all these particular inflammatory cells come to the injured site, macrophages come to the injured site, and also fibronectin comes on the injured site, and then we are having the basal line or basal layer for which is reformed. So now the third step is epidermal layer gets organized. Now the epidermal layer should be organized. How it will organize? Now the invasion of the fibroblasts results in the formation of the granulation tissues in the dermis. So as we saw that the fibronectin is converted into fibrin plug. So that is because of the fibroblasts, obviously. So we are having the invasion of the fibroblasts. We are having the invasion of the macrophages. We also recruited the inflammatory cells. Now these three things are there, right? So now the invasion of the fibroblasts results in the formation of granulation tissue, that is in the dermis. So in dermis, the granulation tissue will be formed. You can see when the wound is healing, a little part of reddish part of we can see. So that is, as we can call it as a granulation tissue, which is happening in the dermis, just below the epidermis, because as of now the epidermal layer has not yet organized. Now the granulation tissue mainly consists of dense population of fibroblasts. We know that the tissue consists of fibroblasts, macrophages, so which requires for the clearing of pathogens and as well as the cellular debris, and also developing vasculature, because developing vasculature is also very important for the particular blood vessel formation, that this and all, right, consisting of VCM components like fibronectin, collagen 3 and hyaluronic acids. So now the fibroblasts is present in the granulation tissue, that is just below the dermis, epidermis. In the dermis, they produces collagen, mainly type 1 and type 3, which helps. Why they produce collagen type 1 and type 3? because they help in increasing the tensile strength of the wound, so that there will be there should not be any pussy kind of structure or any very smooth kind of structure where the microbes can grow rapidly. So that will give you the mechanical support, or and also that particular structural support by this particular fibroblasts that we know. We already studied in ECM. Fibroblasts are one of the reasons why we are having the better mechanical property of ECM, because it's a component of ECM. Now the myofibroblasts, we know that the difference between fibroblasts and myofibroblasts, because here myo in the sense that tissue will be there or cells will be there. So myofibroblasts begins to contract. So they will start contracting, and due to the shrinkage of the wound, okay, the fluid oozes out. So because of this shrinkage, the fluid will go out. Okay, during this time what happens? Epidermal layer gets on stratified or organized, because whatever the fluid is remaining inside the wound should go out. So once that is gone, now the epidermal layer gets stratified or organized. You can see the just before the wound healing and that final layer formation, if any pus or any fluid kind of things are there, that will be that will go out, right? So that's how the things works in the that's how the epidermal layer gets stratified or organized. Now the remodeling and scar formation. Then the particular matrix, whatever the matrix, this matrix has been developed, that undergoes remodeling, which involves synthesis and degradation of ECM components. So here the synthesis is also there and degradation of ECM components are also there. So why synthesis? Because there are few things that need to be there for few more time, little more time for the proper wound healing, and there are some things that should be degraded because their work is done, their function is done. So those should be degraded. So that's how the matrix undergoes remodeling, which involves in the synthesis and the degradation of ECM components. So during the remodeling, what happens? The composition of the matrix changes. Why? Because some things are newly synthesizing, some things are all dying or degrading, right? So previously collagen 3, which is dominant, is converted to the collagen 1 now. So usually what was collagen 3 was major part of the ECM when the wound healing started. Now in this particular fourth step, what happens as you move on to the fourth step, the collagen concentration will be less, whereas collagen 3 concentration will be less, whereas collagen 1 will have more dominant. And that means you need more synthesis of collagen 1 in the fourth step than the collagen 3, whereas collagen 3 will be started degrading. Understanding? So whatever the things collagen 3 is done, the work is done, that has to be degraded, and what we need is collagen 1 now, so that will be synthesized more, that is by the matrix, right? So in matrix, that's what happens in remodeling in the sense the one which was already there, that's dominant, is reduced, the one which was not there, its dominant is increased, right? So that will be converted. So now the remodeling process actually determines the scar formation. Here it depends on the totally remodeling, the scar formation is completely depends on the remodeling process. If this particular process is intensity is less, then the scar formation will be very short, and then it can disappear over the period of time. If it is too intense, if the wound is too intense, then the remodeling will take a lot of time, and based on that, sometimes scar will be there for longer period of time or even lifetime. Now, although the wound is healed at the point of the time, a lot of chemicals and structural changes takes place within the wound site that we had studied. We have just explained in the introduction. So a lot of chemicals and structural changes will be there, because wound, whatever was there before and after the wound and after the wound healing, there is significant difference in the chemicals which are present in that particular place. Okay, and even structural changes also will be there. Because of this, they may continue for, the scar will be formed, right? So, and it may continue for many months, so till the composition of the matrix returns to its original state. So, once that composition comes back to before wound healing, how the natural cells were there, so those natural cells should be replaced, and once that happens, then only the scar formation will go away, right? So, in some intense wounds, we cannot erase completely the scar, so though some of the scars will be there. Okay, so that was because of the whole cell and the structure is damaged completely, ruptured, you can call it as. Okay, so that was about the wound healing process. It's very simple to think that when the person gets wound, it should be healed. For that, the epidermal cells, that means outer cells proliferation migration is required, because this is the first beginning step. For that, we are having platelets. They will be recruited. They will secrete the storage granules. They will recruit more platelets, and they will be responsible for the blood clotting or blood clotting cascades. And then later, the provisional matrix will be created by the fibronectin, and that will recruit the inflammatory cells. And because of these inflammatory cells, we can have we can start beginning with this particular effective wound healing along with the macrophages, inflammatory cells, and as well as we are having the fibronectin, because where the inflammatory cells will help in growing the new cells, whereas macrophages, they will clear out the pathogens and as well as the cellular debris, and whereas the fibronectin, and they will give the mechanical support. So that's how the second thing, basal layer will be reformed, and the epidermal layer gets organized because of the ACM and its components which are there on the site, and then remodeling and scar formation just now we saw. So that's what happens in this particular series of events, or you can say in both the thing you can have the same distinct sequence of events that underlie wound healing or just wound healing. For both the topics, this is the answer. You are having only one topic, that is the sequence of events that underlie wound healing. But if asked for wound healing, just for wound healing, how exactly the wound healing takes place, then you should be able to answer this. Okay, these steps. So that's it. The next topic we are having engineered wound healing, that we will discuss in the next class.